This is Larry the Bearded Wonder with World 11, and you're tuned to the World 11 Podcast Network. Press start to engage your mind.
Hello, this is your host Zoe, and welcome to Mind Over Media Podcast, a podcast powered by the World 11 Network. Here's a note for all listeners. I am not a licensed psychologist, and all views from the show are from my point of view or from the point of view of my guests. Please take this into consideration while listening. Thank you. On today's episode, we'll be covering the hit Netflix series Lucifer and how it looks at therapy and its theory of self-actualization. Lucifer just wrapped up its series on September 10th, and I'm very excited to dive into this one today. So join me as we get ready to blow our minds.
Spoilers.
As previously stated, there are spoilers ahead. While we try not to reveal everything about the media we cover, there are spoilers about the content. Keep that in mind as you enjoy today's show. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Mind Over Media. Today we are covering the show Lucifer. Normally, we try not to give serious spoilers for the content we cover. However, given the topic of discussion, the series finale plays a huge role in this. So if you haven't completely finished the series, turn back now, because warning, major spoilers ahead. Now, I don't want to seem rude, but if you don't know what the show is, what have you been doing with your life? I highly recommend it. However, I will give a short synopsis for those who don't know about the show. The show is about the devil, or named in this series, Lucifer Morningstar. He becomes bored with running hell and decides to live it up on Earth by going to LA and running a nightclub. Through a series of events, he ends up becoming a consultant for the LAPD and forming a connection with Detective Chloe Decker. This is a very broad view of what the show is about, but if you want to know more, you're going to have to watch it yourself. So initially, the show was put out there by Fox for the first 3 seasons. Then Fox canceled it due to low viewership. And then a month after that, Netflix picked it up and the viewership skyrocketed. For the later seasons, it has a total of 6 seasons. So today we're going to start off with how the show portrays therapy. Lucifer ends up in a therapist's office during the first episode while following clues of a crime, but he quickly realizes just how helpful therapy can be. This is one of the big things for me in this show. If a man like Lucifer Morningstar, someone who is gorgeous beyond all belief, has all the money you could ever wish for in the world, and all of the men and women he wants, why would he possibly need to go to therapy? Therapy is only for people who are seriously messed up, right? Wrong. Anyone can go to therapy, and in my personal opinion, I think everyone should at some point in their life. In the show, every character ends up going to see Linda, the therapist, at some point. Many go multiple times and for multiple different reasons. One thing I did find funny and relatable, though, is that Lucifer always took Linda's advice in the wrong way somehow. He would leave her office all smiley and thinking he had the right answer, and she would sit there puzzled and confused. I have at times taken what my therapist said completely wrong. I think that shows the reality of therapy. Yes, therapists can help guide us to the answer, but they can't tell us exactly what to do and how to do it. They're a guide to help, not to give life answers. The only portion of therapy that didn't really fit with reality is that Linda becomes really good friends with her clients, aka the other characters. She'd go out drinking and get involved in their personal lives. She even had a child with one of them. In real life, there is a definite separation between doctors and patients. I did ask my therapist to come to my commitment ceremony, but that was about it. Otherwise, he's my doctor and I see and talk to him at the scheduled time. There are some therapists who will give you their number to contact them when they're needed, but it's always in that professional context. I'm your therapist, you need help. It's never, let's go out and get drinks. But however, at the end of the show, this line crossing kind of ended up working out. In a way, Linda was writing a book about her time with Lucifer and helping Lucifer grow, and at this time she thought he was going to become God. So she wrote a book about her helping him. Lucifer then found the book and read over his entire experience with Linda, and he just got to see the growth that he made by seeing Linda all this time. And I think that is very telling also. Things like keeping a journal and seeing your progress. I don't know, maybe at some point you could talk to your therapist if you have one about, where you were at the beginning of your contact with them and where you are now. Seeing your growth can be a huge, huge help. Because sometimes we feel like we aren't growing at all. So it helps to know that we actually are. So now we move on to the second concept for today, and that is the show's concept of self-actualization. Now I say the show's concept because if you Google what self-actualization is, it doesn't really match with what's in the show, but there is a good reason for that. So let's for a second talk about the original idea of self-actualization. It comes from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is basically a pyramid that says what people need. At the very bottom, your basic needs, food, water, shelter, things like that. Your very basic things that you need to survive. Growing into social connection, figuring out who you are, and then ultimately self-actualization. Self-actualization attributes itself to when a person truly knows who they are. They know their strengths, they know their weaknesses, and they strive to use these in their lives to make them happy. They are fully content with who they are as a person. And this doesn't mean that they don't continue to grow, because everyone can grow, but they are comfortable in their own skin. And so this is what self-actualization is in the theory. Now, in the show, self-actualization takes on a much more physical form. The angels in the show take on the physical attributes based on how they view themselves subconsciously. So I'm going to give you some examples. Lucifer thought he was nothing but pure evil, so he got stuck in his devil form. He couldn't shift back into looking normal. And the very fact that Lucifer has a devil face at all says a lot about how he saw himself. He saw himself as this evil being that got banished by God, and so he subconsciously put on a face to match that image of himself. Amenadiel felt unworthy and his powers stopped working because he didn't feel that he deserved them. Lucifer feels emotionally vulnerable around Chloe, so he becomes physically vulnerable and can get hurt next to her. Lucifer's daughter Rory was going to kill someone, and we start to see her face change into the devil face that Lucifer has, and then she decides to stop, and she does not stain herself that deep, that subconsciously, so the devil face goes away. There's another decision, Lucifer deciding to be God or not, and he realizes that he doesn't want to be God. And he realized that because his wings wouldn't pop out so he could fly up to heaven, and they didn't because he didn't want to go. And it's finally at the very end of season 6 that Lucifer learns to bring his subconscious and his conscious mind together. And that is an important concept. He makes himself physically vulnerable to prove that he loves his daughter. He willed his body to match his conscious thought instead of his subconscious one. Though this may not be the exact theory of self-actualization, it does bring about a very good point about mental health. How you view yourself deep down is very, very important. If you think you're nothing and you're worthless, then that's how you'll live your life, never wanting for better or thinking you deserve better, thinking you deserve love or company or anything. But if you can see the goodness inside yourself, see your self-worth, your specialness, and know that you're deserving of love and care and all things in this life, then that's how you approach life. To have a better life, you have to look inside yourself. Happiness and bettering yourself comes from within, not from looking out. Well, that was a deep episode today, and I hope you got as much out of that show as I did. It is one I fully intend to go back and rewatch. Also, if you haven't seen the show, what are you doing here? I told you to leave. Now you have spoilers. Oh well. Until next time, I'm Zoe, this was Mind Over Media, and remember, protect your peace. You can find Mind Over Media podcast in the World 11 podcast feed at world11.podbean.com. All spelled out, all one word. World 11 Podcast Network can also be found on all major podcatchers, such as Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Good Pods. You can find the Mind Over Media podcast on Twitter at MindMediaPDcast, and the entire World 11 network at World1_1 podcast.